just to give you a brief idea of what we're going to be talking about here today, we're going to be looking at producing great content, at engagement strategies of different kinds, at using analytics and telling stories, and at streamlining the process for efficiency, because I know that you often are working in specific ways. You may not have that many people in your organization. You often wear many hats simultaneously, and I want to make sure that we are able to streamline this as much as possible so that it works well for you. Let's go back and see what else we're going to talk about. Our first strategy here, which is focusing on great content. And I've noticed that EPOs often place too much emphasis on not having high enough quality content. Place too much emphasis on branding, which is very different from high quality content in that it is about beautiful design and logos and taglines and colors, all of which is important. But we need to have the content piece as well, because at the end of the day, the content piece is what is going to be driving people back to your website over and over again. We want to make sure that that's there. And so we want to be able to produce regular content, whether blog posts or social feeds that have the keywords on them, to make sure that people are able to find you at the end of the day. And so I've got this kind of little image here to illustrate some of the kind of two hallmarks of great content, borrowing this from Sonia Simone, a marketing blogger. On the one hand, we have content that's interesting, and it also needs to be useful. So her little matrix here shows for example, the website LOL Cats, one of the most popular websites on the internet, is very interesting, especially if you like cats, but it's not particularly useful. Whereas Wikipedia, which is very useful, is also not always particularly interesting. It doesn't have the kind of intriguing or compelling angle that makes it good for social feeds. We want to be able to put the two things together to make it both interesting and useful. You can put together wonderful content, but if it doesn't have that interesting angle, you're not going to get people there. We also want to look at making great content in some of the things that make great content in economic development. We need to make sure that it has a unique perspective, that there are strong opinions and or emotions. Those are some of the things that would be helpful in driving people over there. Humor, of course, is always good. Sometimes that can be a little bit of a challenge in economic development, but we want to make sure that we try and put that in there from time to time. Telling stories is another useful thing to do, and there are lots of examples of that I'm going to be showing you. We'll talk about that again in a few minutes. Compelling visuals or audio, unexpected connections of different kinds, data that resonates. Let's take a look at some of the ways in which that plays itself out. So here we have an example from Pure Michigan that uses a clever headline, the "What Happens When Beach Meets Boost." There's a little bit of humor there. It's unexpected. It's a little bit surprising. And of course, we always have that important call to action portion of what we want to put on there, so that it isn't just about having the clever marketing, but that it has that kind of inspired reason behind it, which is so critical. Next, we're taking another example from Pure Michigan, which is looking at maybe a surprising or different, very colorful image, certainly something that will grab people's attention. And again, you'll see that call to action over there that drives people over to their site selection tool so that they can begin immediately searching for something that would be useful to them. Other kinds of content here, this is Choose New Jersey, for example, using their Twitter feed to promote a show that is being done. So this is we're going to talk about leveraging content, a way in which that can happen, using words like rock star and excited to be able to do that. And of course, there's an engagement piece here too, because they're mentioning someone else who will notice that on their Twitter feed and help to spread that at the same time. Now, a general rule with any kind of content, of course, is attracting people to your website, giving them the content they need, and giving them a reason to return later on. Now, in economic development, as we said, we've got all of those different things we just talked about, the perspective and the humor and the telling stories, but there is that additional element of data that resonates, because once you've got them at your website, you want to immediately give them the tools to begin doing what they need to do. And this is particularly true if we're looking at investment attraction, because after all, if we restate our goals, it's about attracting investors to your website, potential investors, offering them the content they need. And what are investors looking for? Well, they're looking for data on demographics, on labor force, consumer spending, business and industry information, infrastructure, housing, incentive zones, property databases, and mapping resources so that they can make the action-oriented decisions we want them to make. And of course, finally, we want to give them a reason to return. If they know those tools are there, they're more likely to keep coming back. So here's some examples. On the Santa Rosa Economic Development website, they have embedded within the website pages in different places tools such as these intelligence components so that people immediately, without having to click somewhere else, can begin searching for critical data on demographics. In this case, there are charts that can be immediately looked at because we know how important visuals are. Our brains are much better at absorbing those kinds of visuals than they are long lists of text. We're much better, as humans, we're better at looking for patterns than just making sense of long lists of data. And so these charts help us do that. And of course, they can all be exported. We also give them the ability to look for labor force information because, after all, if they're looking at investing in your location, we want to make sure that they can immediately, at the click of a mouse within your website itself, get some information that they're going to need to be able to make those decisions. There's mapping options as well. And again, it's important to have this GIS site selection tool, but we really want to make sure that the website pages, as much as possible, have this functionality embedded within them. This is something that intelligence components make possible. They're really just part of the flow of the regular website. And that really is kind of a new development in the way economic development websites can work. Another example, as you can see here on Mojave County, if you look down on their page, they actually have a widget that will direct them to the site selection tool. They can begin doing the searching right from there. And that is because each time we require people to click to a new layer in a website, we risk losing them. And so these kinds of intelligence components and widgets are really quite critical in making sure that we retain as much as possible the visitors that we get to our websites. Once they are put in the search information, as we saw over there, that would lead them directly to their GIS site selection tool. So now they can continue their search without having to do that extra step on their own. It's really all about anticipating human behavior and being able to work with it. Now, we talked about investment attraction, but if we're going to modify our goals for our existing businesses, after all, the businesses in your location are the lifeblood of your area economy, we want to make sure that they are able to be as successful as possible. So we can kind of modify our goals a little bit here. We can talk about attracting existing businesses to your website. You want to make sure that they're able to get something of value from an economic development organization. There are many resources you can provide them. You want to offer content that they might need. So they're going to be looking for information on market intelligence, on demographics, on labor force, on mapping suppliers and competitors, and on the best places to advertise. Now, this is really interesting, actually, because small and medium-sized businesses cannot afford to pay for the market intelligence that large businesses have at their disposal. They have that in their budgets. And so sometimes your local businesses may be outdone by the larger chains that are able to put that kind of consulting to work. And of course, although we want to attract these chain stores, certainly we're aware that often the revenues and the profit gets diverted outside of our location. So we really want to encourage those independent homegrown stores. And one of the things you can give them is access to data that they might not otherwise be able to afford, and that will help them inform their decision making. And if you have that there, you're really giving them a reason to return. So an example that we have here from Choose Scottsdale is the Size Up Local Business Intelligence tool, which is embedded directly in their website. Local businesses can do different kinds of analysis, get market intelligence, benchmark themselves against the competition, determine best places to advertise, get all sorts of competitive intelligence. They can map suppliers and competitors, and they can do a demographic analysis both for workforce, but also for consumer spending and the types of market that they might want to attract. Just to give you an example of some of the information they may be able to go and find. If we're looking for manufacturers in Scottsdale, Arizona, you could put in your revenue. And at a glance, this business would be able to see how they compare with others in that region, others in the state, others nationally, and others within that particular area. This is information they may not otherwise be able to get their hands on. Similarly, they'd be able to look at the number of employees they have. How do they compare now within that community? How do they compare regionally within the state and nationally? Important for decision making. If they wanted to figure out the best places to advertise, we're looking at a shoe store in Scottsdale, Arizona. This actually will pinpoint places where their advertising dollars may be best spent in order to make those decisions. Again, something small and medium-sized businesses would not otherwise have any access to that kind of consulting, so you can make them very happy at a glance. So the second marketing idea that we can put out there is really to work on engagement. We've noticed that economic development organizations are very good at putting themselves out there. Sometimes it's really all about using these media the way we used legacy media, things like television and newspapers and radio. Too often we see people producing a marketing message and just sending it out there and hoping people will listen. But of course, we want to engage them. This isn't like television and radio advertising in that way, because they can talk back to us. And we want to encourage that dialogue as much as possible because we want to create relationships. So some of the ways that we can encourage engagement are to regularly post content on selected feeds and invite feedback, to ask questions when we post things, not just put them out there, but ask people to respond to give some kind of response. You can use polls. You can use something like surveymonkey.com to design your polls, or LinkedIn gives you the ability to generate your own polls within the site itself, and you can put it out there. People like to be asked questions. They like to give feedback, especially if you make them really compelling, and it gives you an opportunity to engage. Now, LinkedIn groups are a very fertile place for engaging with people. You can find groups, particularly, look for the sectors that are particularly of interest to you in terms of investment attraction, whether it's, biosciences or manufacturing or food processing or whatever it might be. There are groups on the internet, particularly on LinkedIn, for just about everything. And it's a place for you to put out information, to see the questions people are asking, to answer them, to offer them information, to comment on things that they've actually said as well. And I always encourage our clients to consider setting up their own LinkedIn organizational group for your community, where your local businesses can follow and participate in conversations. You can post information about your resources. They can post information about sales or new developments or successes, and hopefully they can encourage each other in that way. It becomes a kind of online community for local businesses. And if you are the moderator, the person who set it up, you get to be a big part of that conversation. It's a great way to provide tangible value to the businesses in your community. And of course, replying or commenting to the posts of others is really quite critical. It's not enough to just put your own stuff out there and encourage people to engage with you, but see what other people are saying, what other organizations, what your businesses or prospects are saying. Respond to them and offer information when they seek it. Here's an example in a group called Economic Development Leadership, one of the most popular economic development groups on LinkedIn. In this case, we have David Boyd posts a question, and he's looking to engage people. He says, I'm posting this article. It's about incentives. It's sure to spark some lively discussion, as you say here, and then asking questions from people. How would they respond to it? And as you can see, they've had lots of different comments. People have lots of different things to say. We have an answer from New Mexico Economic Development Partnership down at the bottom. This is a question that has got people talking, and it's a really nice way for you to do that. Another example, of course, is posting things regularly on your organizational page on LinkedIn. So Empire State Development has their own page on LinkedIn. They post information here about a capital fund. As you can see from the number of people who've liked it, it's quite popular. Now, the important thing to know about LinkedIn is anytime someone likes or comments or shares something that you or your organization has posted, it then gets seen by all of their contacts and connections. So it really is this kind of exponential growth in possible impressions. And I'll show you a little bit afterwards how you can track those impressions as they get made. As an example of the Partnership for Downtown St. Louis is posting sites for the day, available sites and properties. They've got all this on their site selection tool. They're using this as content out on their social feeds. This makes their commercial realtors very happy because, of course, it's likely to drive additional traffic bound back to their available sites and properties. Also post maybe a business of the week or a business of the day, an entrepreneur of the week, something like that. It's another great way for you to use this forum, this platform, in order to spread the word about the properties, sites, initiatives, and local businesses in your area. An example from Gilbert Economic Development using YouTube to put out information about an initiative in their particular area. You can see that it's gotten some views and some likes here as well. Even a small location isn't limited by its bricks and mortar size. You can go online, and if you have a well-developed and tended set of social platforms, over time they will mature and you will get more views. And of course, Google loves Google. So using things like YouTube is a great way to make sure that you are getting that information out there, because it will always figure very highly in Google's search algorithm at the top of their search rankings. In this case, we see Gilbert using Twitter to be able to ask people questions for engagement. What's your story? Come and share it. This is something that you can actually come and see, but it's an opportunity for people to contribute here because they're asking a specific question. Great platform for engagement. And anytime you're doing engagement, of course, that can't be the end-all, be-all. You need to make sure that you do the follow-up with telephone calls, with updates to your CRM, to using email, building LinkedIn connections with everyone that you actually meet along the way, so that that engagement has a final purpose and can convert at the end of the day to some sales. Now, analytics are too often overlooked, but I would argue that analytics are the new black, and this is something that we really need to think about. Ways in which we can identify and monitor the numbers that help us track our effectiveness in different ways. So that's web traffic, and I'll give you some examples of why you should be looking at your Google Analytics. Now, I've done a webinar not too long ago. You can find it on our SlideShare, on our YouTube feed, on using Google Analytics and ZoomProspector Analytics strategically in order to build business. All sorts of information. Where are your visitors coming? I was working with one client, and when I looked at their Google Analytics, we realized that they had a ton of visitors coming from Germany. And when we spoke to them about it, they said, that's interesting, because we had done a trade mission to Germany a month before. And so although they hadn't checked it, it was a great evidence that their trade mission had converted in some ways to website visits. What kind of devices they're using, what days are busiest, which will be important for you in terms of posting, how long visitors spend on the site, what pages they tend to use to enter the site, what sources send traffic your way. So if you're finding you get a lot of stuff from LinkedIn, but not a lot of traffic from Facebook, it'll help you determine where to spend more of your time when it comes to posting great content. What search terms lead people to your site, so you can build that into your text and copy. And which email blasts are effective in boosting traffic. So here's a snapshot of what Google Analytics might look like. You get some information on visits, on how many people are unique visitors, as opposed to returns, page views, how many pages they actually see once they come, how many pages per visit roughly, how long they spend on your site. We want to get that number up as much as possible. Bounce rate, that's something you'll see over there on the left. We want to be able to keep that bounce rate low. And of course, what new visits are versus return visits, so that we're able to track that. We want to encourage returns as well, but we also want to keep driving up the number of new visits. Now, of course, with ZoomProspector, we also offer a proprietary analytics that lets you get analytics specific to site selection. So it's a lot of different things in terms of kinds of reports and kinds of searches that people are actually doing that will help you fine-tune your marketing as well. If you want some more information about ZoomProspector Analytics, you feel free to reach out to me. I'll have my email address at the end, or Twitter feed. I'm happy to get in touch and walk you through that. But those analytics are really important for strategic marketing and communications, because you will find both the results of the information you're putting out there and what people are looking for. Now, similarly, you want to track opens and clicks on email campaigns, the numbers on your social feeds, impressions, likes, and comments. Here's an example from a LinkedIn posting, how many impressions it got, how many people actually clicked on it, how many interactions, what kinds of engagement, and then the things that people were actually doing at the end. So really very, very useful for you to be able to determine what is of interest to people and what gets their attention and what doesn't, so you can fine tune your information. An example on YouTube, we see the number of views, an easy metric to have. In this case, we see Charlotte Economic Development posted a video that got over 22,000 views, clearly something that's of interest to people, and that was a very successful campaign for them. Edmonton Economic Development up in Alberta, Canada, also putting regularly, as you see, different kinds of videos out there. They may not have views in the tens of thousands, but they're clearly kind of continue to reach out to their community. And the more you post, the more information you're going to get back from people, the more of those return visits. Next, we want to look at telling stories. And as I said earlier, the human brain is really hardwired to appreciate stories. We use narrative as a basic way to organize meaning in things. And we know that when we use stories in marketing, people are much more likely to recall them afterwards. And that's really always going to be one of our goals. So here's some examples of ways in which we can build storytelling into economic development. We tell stories about specific businesses and we put them out on LinkedIn. Here's a couple of examples from Wisconsin. So anytime you're doing this, you're actually sharing the stories about how they're benefiting or some success that they might be having, or simply offering it as a kind of profile. As you see in this example from Greater Halifax Partnership, we've got a very colorful image on the side. We have a profile on a small business owner, and you've got a lot of comments over there. A lot of people are quite interested in what it is that they're doing, and it's a great way to kind of build that engagement within the community. Another example also from Greater Halifax, they do kind of profiles on different businesses and different features of their community. In this case, it's a video profiling their airport. Short, it's only a 5-minute video. You'll notice at the bottom that there is the text. This text description is quite critical because that's what Google is indexing. Google is not looking within your video for the keywords. They're going to be looking for it down on the bottom in the text description. It's a great way to tell stories. This was quite innovative. Also, Greater Halifax Partnership offering a series of podcasts that can be downloaded in iTunes, offering different sort of stories, profiles, interviews of different kinds as well. This is an electronic newsletter, in this case, Greater Waco. And you'll notice that there are profiles, of course, and case studies, new projects, successes, all of that. But you'll also notice that in the graphic on the left-hand side, there's a kind of story being told as well about employment levels and how employment has improved over the course of 1 year. So it's, again, about using that data that you've got at the beginning to be able to drive people give them that information and make them return to your site by having it there. You'll also see that information at the top over here where they talk about how many new jobs have been generated over the past number of months. Examples of stories can be different or unusual, compelling. Here is Edmonton sharing a video about the way in which horror film projects have been filmed in Edmonton. It's a little bit different, certainly something that might catch people's attention. Another example from UK Trade Investment, where they're doing profiles on businesses of different kinds. And again, you'll notice the text description at the bottom, which is really important for SEO. So our fifth idea here is about streamlining and seeking efficiency. And as I said it earlier, we really want to make sure we're producing content with legs. So what is content with legs? Well, it has some kind of human interest angle. It has high quality images, especially if we're going to be using social feeds, because those images are very critical to getting people to click through and learn more. And seeking stories, some kind of narrative within the content itself. Now, because you are very busy and you have lots of different things to do, and you may be a one-man or a one-woman marketing department, you need to leverage this across as many platforms as possible. So if you have a video, it goes on your website. You can talk about it in your blog post. It should be posted on LinkedIn. Of course, it must be on YouTube as well. You can also post it on Twitter. Examples, of ways in which you can take the same content and put it in as many places as possible. I do very much encourage the clients I work with to use dashboards such as Hootsuite so that you can manage multiple accounts at a glance. You don't have a lot of time, but you'll find a lot of the metrics there. So if someone needs information about has shared or mentioned you want to be able to track it very quickly, and a dashboard like Hootsuite is a great way to stay on top of that. And then, of course, creating an editorial calendar to help you plan out posts over time will make it much easier. Every day you come in, you take a look, you do a quick overview of what you've got online, and you can set your calendar to plan out the posts you've got next. Now, there's a bonus number 6 here, which is about trying something new. And I would encourage all marketers to avoid falling into a rut. Even if those, the things you're doing are working for you, every once in a while we should be trying something new. Some examples: using more images to grab attention, profiling a local business or entrepreneur, or a site, a site of historical or interesting industrial value. Seeking inspiration in different kinds of ways, particularly from your local business community already, but also from your data. Take a presentation that you might be doing in some other capacity and turn it into a slide share posted online. Consider producing short videos interviewing local residents in a commercial center, downtown area. You can use an iPhone that now, or a smartphone that records HD video. Keep them really short. Even 30 seconds is fine. You don't need any fancy video editing. Slap on your logo and set up a YouTube channel. People love to see themselves online. You'll find that gets great engagement. Or consider trying out a new social media platforms such as Instagram or Pinterest that will drive traffic to your website. Now, we're hoping, of course, that all of this will breed success. This is really part of our goal here, obviously. We want to make sure, just to review, that we're offering high-quality content, that we're working on encouraging engagement and not just broadcasting our information, but getting people to answer and, of course, seeking to comment and respond or reply to other people's posts. You want to use analytics strategically as much as possible. I do encourage you to check out the video we have on our website or on our YouTube channel that goes into how to use analytics strategically. Take a look at how you can share stories. And we also have done a video on a webinar rather that's posted in a video on storytelling as a strategic move. And you're welcome to check that out. It's also on SlideShare. Streamlining for efficiency, using dashboards, posting the same content leveraged across many different places. And then finally, trying something new, kind of pushing yourself every once in a while to take a little bit of a chance and see if you can get information in different ways. Now, I would love to open the floor here to questions. I don't know if people have any specific questions about different kinds of marketing initiatives that you may have going on. I do work with our clients one-on-one on coming up with some creative solutions to their marketing conundrum. So this is something that I've been doing for quite a bit of time already. You are always welcome to reach out to me via email, asklar@gisplanning.com. Of course, tweet out to us at GIS Planning or to me personally at Elisa Sklar. I'm happy to hear the things that you have to say, and I'd be very happy to work with you individually. So I do have one question that's just another question that's just come in here, and that's when to change up a marketing campaign. That's a very good question. So we talk about not falling into a rut. We want to see that we are over time introducing some kinds of variety. And I really would encourage people to consider every few weeks, once a month, touch in with yourself, take a check back and take a look at what you've actually been doing that you can maybe try something a little bit differently. I also like to keep an eye on what other economic development organizations are doing. I ran a webinar last year on great ideas, learning from your peers on innovations, and it's interesting to see the kinds of things that other economic development organizations are doing. So why don't you bookmark a few of them and check back with them from time to time, and you might see that others, sometimes the best ideas are the ideas that our competitors and our colleagues have, and we can certainly learn from them. This is a webinar series that I do run from time to time, so keep an eye out for more information about that. Thank you very much. I've gotten some very nice feedback here on how useful this was, and I am pleased to hear that. You will be getting a recording of this in coming days. I encourage you to check out some of the other webinars on offer by GIS Planning and Economic Development Online.